everybody. My name is Amy Amadeo. I'm the Executive Director of AZSA. Welcome today. We have a wonderful webinar. We have Sue Haviland of Haviland Storage Services, and she wrote a great article last year, and we came across it, and we're like, hey, she would make a great host for a webinar. She's been around about 16, 17 years in the business, and full of knowledge, lots of great stories. So Sue, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks so much, Amy. I'm glad to be here. And on the 16, 17 years, I actually wish I was that young still to storage. That's actually just how long Haviland Storage Services has been technically in existence. I cut my teeth many, many years ago as a site manager with Extra Space, 35 plus years ago now. So I'm a little older at it than I hopefully look.
So. Well, I think everybody would have agreed 16, 17 years seemed about right. But yeah, of your own business. And then again, like you said, with Extra Space. So yeah, definitely got that foundation, a great foundation, and then went out on your own and have been absolutely majorly successful ever since. So thank you. And again, thank you so much. I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thanks. Well, the workplace safety has actually always been kind of an important topic to me. Number one reason why, as a site manager, I got beat up. And back in the day when that happened, I didn't have a lot of support. I had no policies in place, didn't know what to do, was handled pretty poorly. And so I took that personal experience as I went out and became a leader and grew in my positions to know what would be important to the people that I had to supervise. And then along with that, it's growing how not only you look at the workplace safety of the individuals, but the actual workplace safety of the whole property. So I would just like to ask everybody, if you were asked by somebody, do you feel safe at work? How would you reply, say as the supervisor, or how would your employees actually answer that question? And part of why I start out asking that question is part of one of the things I also do is I do a lot of auditing. So outside of the properties I manage myself, I'm seeing a lot of other operators, whether they own 1, 2, 10, 20, I'm seeing their stores and how things are handled. And it's amazing to me when I'm sitting at a property sometimes how often I hear somebody say, I don't really feel safe at work. And so when you hear that, then you want to get into well, why don't you feel safe at work? And so as supervisors, owners of our properties, that's one of the questions that has to be key, that we need to be aware of that and understand how our day-to-day employees feel that are running our properties. So making sure that you have a program in place. So today we're mostly going to talk about the actual physicality of the property and being safe and making sure our employees are safe, that we provide a safe property for our customers. But I also want you to think about, as we roll through all these things, the safety of the workplace for your actual employees. Another personal thing I have, I'm known for being consistent. Consistency is one of my favorite words. And no matter how many policies I have in place, what kind of work environment I have, and I'm very proud of always creating and having a positive work environment. But you occasionally get that one employee who can really disrupt the whole program. And we recently had one of those that was very aggressive to other employees. And ultimately, in that realm, also punched a customer's car. And so obviously they were terminated. And so now I'm going through all the dance about this person claims they were wrongfully terminated and has all kinds of stories about things. Now, I'm going to win, but had I not had proper documentation, had signed documents, had training programs, had safety programs, had counselings, had all the things in place to protect not only the asset, but all the other employees that worked there, this situation could be going a whole different way. So think about that as we talk about the actual property safety today. Your programs that are in place for your employees, if they feel unsafe outside of the realm of what we talked to today, and if you are observing some things happening. So we don't automatically think of the many ways that these situations that could arise can cause physical or emotional harm to our properties, but you have to think about if there's a situation going on and you're not fully aware, you're not doing anything about it, you could have lost productivity, you get deflated morale, and there's nothing worse than when that starts going through your teams. You get medical expenses and you get legal fees or claims that come up that could have been avoided. So we want to make sure that we look for how we need to set up. Now, every location and size of your location could be slightly different. You need to have a plan in place if you have multiple stores, and then dial that down to each specific location, what they each need. So we want to make sure that we create the conditions that will prevent any kind of harm, both to the employees and the property. So our facility managers and staff, we might all be great at recognizing issues, but if we don't ever do anything or have plans in place, think of what that could mean. So your on-site staff, for those of you that still have physical staff at the property every day, they have valuable insight into what's going on and what could be happening. But what could happen is, why would they not report it? Again, don't want to be seen as tattletales, whistleblowers. Maybe the environment is that anybody's afraid to speak up because they're afraid they'll get in trouble. Assumptions that the ownership doesn't want to pay for repairs. And where we get into those assumptions is when you actually do have somebody that will report things and they never see anything change or anything done about it, then that's where that comes in. Ownership doesn't want to pay for repairs. Ownership doesn't care that, a car could disappear in this pothole. Ownership doesn't care that we have this fall and trip hazard. So, what kind of message are you sending back when you actually do get things reported to you? And again, we never want them to think that we don't care or have belief. And most important thing is making them comfortable to be able to come to us with the kinds of things that they see at their property day to day. So I would ask, how many of you actually do some kind of training? I know a lot of times when we're smaller operators and even the larger operators, sometimes we just don't have a good plan. And over the years, I've seen there's so many resources and tools out there. There's really no reason. I know it can be daunting and it seems like, how am I ever going to get this plan together? I don't have the staffing, but look at the resources you have. Look at all the different ways that you could provide just small things, but the training of your staff is one of the most important things you can do to avoid any of these kinds of situations that could or could not happen at your properties. And make sure when you do train your team that everyone's trained. Again, I can't tell you how many times I go out and I'll see at a property and I'll be talking with somebody who works there, say part-time, and they've never been trained on certain aspects of the property that they should be, in regards to the safety, maybe with the gate or the opening and closing of the doors, both the tenant doors and facility doors. And it's because the manager holds all that information and training, and they feel like that they're the only ones that need to know those kinds of things and other people aren't trained on it. I've even seen maintenance personnel on properties or janitorial, whatever you might call them, not have the means and the training that they need, and they're the ones actually doing a lot of the work that revolves around our topic today. So making sure that we're fair and consistent in all of our training and in following up on it, and know your team. How do they learn things? Do they learn it by seeing and doing? Do they learn it by reading something? So have a good combination of how they can learn those things. So again, I was saying, I hear a lot, we don't have the staff to do training, we don't know how to do training, we don't have a trainer. One of the best resources I've had over the years is my actual insurance vendor, my provider. They can give you, and a lot of times they have little programs that'll do all kinds of things on the safety of the property, whether it's for different hazards that could happen, natural disasters, fires like we've recently had in California. They have things on lifting, all kinds of things. So check with your agent and see. One of my old companies actually had a whole webinar series on safety that we were able to utilize and tie in to the storage side of it. And they liked that we were doing it. So it was always good when renewal times came due and they saw that we were trying to be preventative in everything that we do to insure our properties. You can consult nearby health centers. You could have somebody come in from the police department and go over, suspicious activity, things to do, CPR, all kinds of things like that. So think outside the box and look at these different places that you could actually consult to try to get some free resources or some great speakers or handouts or all kinds of things that would help you build your own program. So the key safety training topics. So this from the article when I wrote it, this was some of the main things that as we go around the storage sites that we will see. And so you want to be training on these things. Again, we want people to be able to spot and report hazards. Many states actually have an actual component nowadays that's mandatory that has to be in your employee handbooks. So I highly recommend that if you are not keeping your employee handbook up to date, that number one, you do that, but number two, you check and see, do you have any specific types of things that have to be in it? Like, do you have to have a quarterly safety and hazard inspection checklist done on your property visits to show that you're doing that aspect of it of keeping a safe workplace? The training on repairs and maintenance. What's that mean? Who should be doing the repairs and maintenance? Is it something that the site staff can do, or is it really something that we need to get a professional in to do? Your personal protective equipment. Hopefully you actually have some of that. Proper lifting techniques. And again, the proper lifting techniques should have the basics in your job description. So whenever you hire somebody, those basic what you require for lifting is in the job description, and then you should have as part of your training the actual handouts that go with proper ways, and also the training on proper ways to lift. Especially lifting storage doors is a perfect example of that. How to properly lift a storage door so you don't run the risk of hurting your backs. Preventing slip and falls. Think about your property, walk your property. Are there any spots that could potentially a customer could slip and fall? Trip going up a bump in the asphalt or the driveways. Are any of your stairs cracked? Anything, look for those things. Using ladders and working at heights. What do you allow? Using maintenance and repair tools. I've had a couple people laugh at me when I say, why do you have to train on using the tools? Well, in all the years that I've been cutting locks and teaching other people how to cut or drill out locks, you know why I look at how to use the maintenance and repair tools. Driving and parking. How many of you have had your employees ever hit the golf cart, the buildings, a tenant's car? Handling hazardous chemicals, administering first aid and CPR. Again, this is another topic where in some states it's specific that you have to have someone in your company who is a certified CPR. Fire safety and handling dangerous individuals. And like I talked about earlier, handling the dangerous individuals doesn't always relate just to another tenant who's giving you a hard time. It could be a vendor, could be that tenant, could be more than one tenant, or it could be a coworker. So I live part-time in California, and so I'm thinking back to about a month or so ago when we had all the fires here. I am so glad that part of what we do was having a plan in place and running drills for various incidents. We had some very horrible fires, as you're all aware, and I had 3 sites that were affected by it, whether it was due to power outages or the fear of the fire coming over the canyon at them. We've got air quality. So we have a plan in place. So when there's things going on, we get, evacuation orders, things like that. My staff knows where and what they have to do and where they have to be and when they have to be there and when it's time to leave, those kinds of things. But if you don't ever run through that or have a plan in place, your staff might not know what to do. So something as simple as the power goes out, and in one of my sites we had no power for 5 days. So what do you do? Because your tenants still want to come in and out to get their things because they're worried there might be getting flooded, on fire, and they're all making the mad dash to get there. So those are the kinds of things you have to think about. And the manual gate operation with a power outage or when the gate goes down is one of the most common things I see that people are not trained on, and they don't know how to open their gates manually if it doesn't open. So take a look at your gate system. What kind of training do you have to do to make sure, if you don't want somebody forcing it or a tenant coming and opening it, and then all of a sudden you have to buy a whole new operator. Or I years ago, I came home when I was a site manager and the power had gone out and a tenant had totally taken the whole gate off the rail and taken it down to get in. So then what do you do? So what are those plans? What kind of training do you have so everybody knows how to handle that kind of situation? It's never fun to deal with these, and we always think it won't happen to us, but you just never know, and you need to be prepared. It's better to over communicate than not communicate enough and not give any direction to your team so they have any idea what they should be doing. Situational awareness, so important. And again, when I think of the storage realm and I think of our customers' importance in how our lighting is. So the personal safety of not only our employees, but our customers, they need to be aware of everything that goes on around their property. So how does your property look during the day versus how does it look at night? Are there any areas that are not well lit? Do you have any areas that you don't have cameras that could be identified as somewhere that somebody could have an issue and we wouldn't have any idea to know because it's hidden? So walk your property, check those again. If you're doing, say, a quarterly safety inspection, these are the kinds of things you're always going to catch and always be on top of. If you don't have on-site staff, how do you know if none of the lights are coming on at night? But your tenants with, depending how early it gets dark, if the lights aren't coming on and the tenants still have access, again, look at all those kinds of things. Make sure you're trying to prevent any situations that could be happening. Supplying the proper equipment. So this is a big one. I've actually been to properties before that didn't have the tools to actually cut off a lock for someone. And again, how easy do you want to be to do business? If your employees should be able to cut off the locks for not only to prepare for the auction status, but if you do have a customer, and you can charge your customers for that, but they've got to have the proper tools to do their jobs. Or if somebody leaves their lock on and vacates, they've got to be able to get that. And again, whether you use a grinder, what kind of tools, the electronic bolt cutters, regular old bolt cutters, again, what is the requirements and the safety issues? What would you need to use those kinds of tools? Especially if you're using a grinder, you want to make sure that you have the goggles, those do sparks, you should wear gloves. Again, what do you require? And then making sure that your team's trained and that your team is actually using the equipment. Avoid keeping broken tools. Once it's broke, get rid of it. I did an audit at a site last year, and they had 3 blowers taking up room in the unit that were all broken. They had multiple other things that were broken. And it's just, if it's broke, it's time to get rid of it, replace it with something new, and make sure that you're keeping an asset list. Now, if you're going to keep tools for the property, every year you should be updating your property asset list for that. And how old it is, if it has a warranty, where you bought it, if you need replacement parts, say like on a grinder, if you need discs, what are the right size discs, where can you get them? All those kinds of things make it easy to replace or get the additional equipment needed to use those tools. And then again, like I said, make sure you're inspecting it. Now, if you have eye goggles, for example, when was the last time you got new ones? Are they still clear? Can the people using them see out of them good? They're really not that expensive to be replacing them. And then, and especially since we've come out of all the different, COVID-19, and this year, all of us have been hit with god awful flus and upper respiratory things. Don't make people share equipment that they use on and around their faces. Get something for everyone so that everyone feels comfortable using the equipment they need to safely do their jobs. Because what you're going to have happen if you have one pair of goggles or one respirator for the entire site, you're going to end up with people not using the equipment that they need to use to do a safe job. So make sure you're providing what they need, replacing it as needed, and then inspecting it. Things to think of around the property, obviously, are like the golf cart. How often have you had to go buy all new golf cart batteries back in the day because somebody just didn't fill the battery with water? Okay. Checking the power tools. One of the funniest things, and I've probably got 100 pictures of power tools that the cord is all ripped up and it's been taped up. How safe is that really? That, they got exposed wires and they're just going to tape them up to keep trying to use it. Get them a new drill. Okay. Ladders. I have seen some pretty scary looking ladders in my day, some of the old wooden ones, even with a rung broke off of it. So again, make sure you're checking these things, keeping them all in good condition. And then the personal personal protection equipment, sorry. Again, that's like those goggles, those respirators, face masks, gloves. You don't need to make your maintenance guys share the same work gloves, things like that. So checking that equipment, make sure they don't have holes in them, they don't have cracks in them, they're not overly dirty if they can't be cleaned. So checking all that kinds of equipment. And again, these are the kinds of things, if you're keeping good equipment, you're checking it, you're asking about it, you're replacing it when it's needed. What does that make your employee think? It makes them think that you care. You care about their safety, you care about cleanliness, you care about their health, and you care about giving them the successful tools they need to do a good job. So again, most common thing would be the gear for cutting and drilling the locks. Make sure they have the gloves and goggles, replace it if it's needed, and then also make sure you're doing your training on handling of heavy items. And this gets into our teams that are so super helpful with our customers and they want to go out and help them lift things on or off a truck if they need help. What is your protocol on that? Do you allow it? If you do, I would say you shouldn't, but if you do, knowing that they've had the proper training, so when they've helped load 30 heavy boxes for a customer into their unit, and then the next day they have a back injury, that's the kinds of things you want to prevent. So make sure that training's in place, make sure those policies are in place for what you do allow and what should be lifted and lifted properly. Another common thing I see, and many of you, if you rent trucks, and along with renting the trucks comes the trailers, and some of the majority of the injuries I see happening for a lot of my clients that rent the Lurch U-Haul, Budget, or Penske, is the employees are getting hurt lifting the trailers to hook them up for a customer. And again, that's because proper training isn't done. Certain trailers require 2 people to be hooking them up. But if you haven't been trained on that and you don't know that, then you're leaving yourself open for some kind of injury that could happen. And then one of the most important things, and again, depending, every state can be different, what's required of you. But one of the things I've always done is, and it's easy to not think of these things because it's just the day-to-day, proper handling and storage of all your cleaning products, all the pest control, anything that you would have to basically clean the property, and right down to your Windex. Now, every single item that you buy is supposed to have a safety data sheet, and most of those you can get right online. So like if you go online for Windex, you can go on the Windex thing and print out or download their safety data sheet for what's in Windex and what would happen if you get it in your eyes, you get it in a cut, those kinds of things. If you should have to wash your eyes out, how you have to wash your eyes out, why you'd have to go to the hospital with certain chemicals that you couldn't have eye wash. Do you have an eye wash station? So I'd say too, as you look through your chemicals that you use on your property, some of those would require that you have an eye wash station. And sometimes that's just as long as you have a sink and it's the little bottle of the eye wash. But do you have those kinds of things? Have you ever checked it? And so we keep a binder of our safety data sheets. It's updated every time we switch a product, every time we go to a new product, it goes in that binder. We have our staples, that we use, the Lysols, the Windex, the Clorox, all those kinds of things. And then it gets into, what are you using to mop your storage hallway floors? What are you using to clean up asphalt, oil spills? All those kinds of things need to be going into this binder with what you have. And again, that's so we're properly training people how to use these chemicals to avoid burns to the skin, things in our eyes. And also, if it's not the right product that you should be using on your property and you don't realize that it will eventually cause a bigger issue because it was used over and over in an area or on a type of asphalt or concrete or walls that it shouldn't have been. So again, do you have this? When was the last time you looked at it? And my manager's always kind of grown when it's time, but you've got to do it. And my area managers actually are checking these binders, and they'll go out and kind of eyeball the supplies, and then they'll eyeball the binder to make sure that it's keeping up to date as well. And then as you look at the use of what you have to do around your properties too, again, always be looking, is this stuff that my team should be handling, or should we have a professional? And sometimes when it gets into, say, what kind of cleanup it should be, obviously a hazardous situation, you need to have the professionals come in and do that right so that it's gone and taken away with proper storage and disposal. So again, what should we be doing? What should we be hiring out? Compliance with our local regulations. Another common thing I see is every year at a couple of my properties, not all of them, so it's just I have to know for that local regulation, do you need storm drain permits? Do you have to make sure you're cleaning all your storm drains? And again, is that the kind of thing that your site staff can do, or do you have to have a company come in every year and make sure those drains are cleared out and clean, and that if you need a permit, you have it? So another thing is some states require that, and your insurance company may as well, and a lot of times you may not be aware of that, they require that you have a designated safety manager. And sometimes that has to be at every site, and sometimes that has to just be, if you had 10 stores in a geographical location, it'd have to be one safety manager. And then that safety manager is the person who makes sure you're staying in compliance, make sure any checklists that need to be done monthly, quarterly, annually are done and noted and kept in case you were ever audited. Again, some other states require that you have to have at least one employee be certified by CPR. This is one of the hard ones for me a lot of times, because in this day and age, a lot of my teams sometimes don't want to, they are CPR certified, but they're afraid to administer it if they ever had to. So you have to know who has it and what does it. So one of the things that we've done in the past is we have, as on one of our manager meetings or team meetings, is we have someone come in and we get everybody CPR certified. So not only does it help them on the job, but it would help them in their personal lives as well if they ever needed it. Okay, so check out your local regulations if there's any specific requirements. Sometimes it can be the smallest little thing and it's only in one county versus another one, but you have to know. And sometimes it'll never come back to bite you, and other times it will. In the days of, I don't know if you're like me, but I already this week got, outside of this topic, I already got notified by an attorney about if I was aware of anybody who wasn't following the junk law fee that we have now in California. So there's always that bottom feeding attorney out there looking for something to make a class action lawsuit. So make sure you are always in compliance, even down to the littlest things that you could never come back and be thrown into a big pot with everybody else who doesn't pay attention, who doesn't have a plan, who doesn't put things in place to protect their employees and the property. And again, the lifting, the certain things, those are all things that should also be discussed when you're hiring somebody and as they go through their job description. So they're never surprised that you have this requirement of your job and that this is part of it. And these are things that we have to do. So the benefits of the workplace safety training, it ensures everybody feels safe. It promotes the positive atmosphere. Like I said, if they see that you're never doing anything, they don't see you replace equipment. They've told you about an issue for a month, 2 months, now it's a year and you don't do anything. That's not going to promote that you work in a safe environment or that it's cared that you have a safe environment. Neglecting it, you could have, it's an easier way to get more workers' compensation claims. If you've got a lot of places where somebody can step off the steps the wrong way, step off the asphalt the wrong way, the curbs, you're requiring them to use equipment that does not provide the safety that they need to use those things, then you're setting yourself up for possible lawsuit, let alone them looking for a new job. The training is going to reduce your risk. It's going to make your insurance companies a lot happier. It's going to foster the healthy environment, and it's going to improve your overall business operations. Your customers notice if they see the same thing broken over and over and over as they come in. And, if you've had something that's been broken for months, that just tells the customers, let alone your employees, I don't care to fix this. I'm not going to fix this, but I am, think about that tenant that gets a rent increase and they've, driven their tire through a pothole the size of a Volkswagen VW every day to come into their unit. So look at those kinds of things and what kind of image are you projecting? So this is a lot of stuff to go through and think about, but I just think it's just so important, and it is one of the areas that we often forget to focus and spend time on. And that's mainly because we think it's never going to happen to us. So think about if you were one of the people who just went through the fires in LA, you were one of the people that went through the hurricanes in North Carolina that are, still dealing their businesses out of tents and using propane to heat the areas, things like that. Think about how it'll never happen to you and what you could have done in case it did. And so again, I say, have that plan in place, especially, in Arizona. Think about what things could happen to you at your properties. What are the 3 most common things that you could have happen, weather-wise? Again, brownouts to preserve power, hey, you don't get a lot of rain, but when you do, you get it, right? How about
Absolutely.
if you had a lot of water all of a sudden? What plans do you have in place for your staff so they know what to do, and instead of having to go to panic mode, they're not sure. If they have an idea, they've had training, they're going to be calmer. It's going to be calmer for your customer base, and you're going to have a lot less possible claims, issues, and bigger repair bills if you just think about it all ahead of time.
Sue, unbelievable. Great advice. You're right. There's a lot there. I know I have a couple comments and then we'll go to some of the questions, but training, again, can't emphasize that enough. One of the things AZSA does is we do have on our website, we do have an operations manual and a sales manual. that was written by Carol Mixon, our chair of education. And there's documents, all of that. If you don't feel that you have the training or the expertise to talk about it, please take a look at our manuals. We also have it, like you said, people learn differently. Some people read. We also have the manual broken down into little bite-sized webinars, and they're really, really a wealth of knowledge. So if your internal does not have training, because it's time consuming, and it takes the right kind of people to be able to do that. We already have that for you. So please.
And here's the thing, Amy, they could take all the resources that you offer as a state association. And it's so wonderful, because I think a lot of times with training, people get so scared of it is because they think it has to be such this long process. Do it in the little bits. Take one of the resources Amy tells you have and build around that. Because if you're doing too much and too long at one time, because if I keep talking, you guys will all check out on me. But think about your staff. And, one of the things I do, because I'm spread out and I have all different owners. So while I have a lot of sites, they're not all the same owner, but I build my team like we're all one team. And even if I have to do it through Zoom, like a webinar like we're doing today, we'll take one topic and we'll go over it, and we'll brainstorm if it's something new to us and we're figuring out how the best practices should be. And you get that feedback from your day-to-day people, and then you can use these resources and you build a great thing that all of a sudden it wasn't so daunting, because you had a great resource, you got the feedback, you listen to the people who are doing it, and a 45-minute thing just probably could have saved you from the training of it, a big lawsuit, changed the whole morale of your employees, or, all of the above.
Right.
So it doesn't have to keep getting put on the back burner. Like, I'll get to it, because it's going to take so much time. The states, Amy's got so many great resources for you, with Carol, me, we're all out here. And a lot of times we just want everybody to have those resources and do it better, because when we all do it right and we all have these great environments, it's better for all of us.
Absolutely. And it's not just AZSA. Any of your state or self-storage associations are fantastic and have great resources. And and like Sue said, Carol, she's out there too. Sue's out there. We're here to help. The whole idea is we want people operating in safe environments. So absolutely. The other thing too, if members, you guys want something that is more live, and especially the owner operators, if you have the manuals and you want it live and you want to learn, we can do it, a roundtable, a live roundtable somewhat throughout the year, or we can use that for our town hall topic. We could bring Sue in, and she can talk about all the stuff we talked about here live. So please use us. We are a great resource for that, and we want to keep everybody safe. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I think using your insurance company to making sure you're doing the do's and don'ts was a brilliant thing. And I forget about that. And that is absolutely, because they want you safe. Because they don't, I know they don't want you to have claims. That's how they make their business, but they want everybody safe, that first and foremost. And those people in insurance are experts, and everybody that's in the field is phenomenal. So.
And we have some great companies and your vendors. And the thing of it is, it's getting harder and harder. I'm sure many of you are seeing a lot of companies aren't insuring storage anymore.
Right.
So if you're showing that you're doing safety training, that you're doing natural disaster training, you're asking them for resources. I mean, as an example, Chubb in California sent out, when the fires happen, they start sending out, and they do it all year long, but they'll just send, you get a newsletter, and just from those newsletters you can create a quick little checklist from your insurance company of things to go over, in a staff meeting, even
Right.
to train.
It doesn't have to be difficult or time consuming, but like you said, those little things can save you thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, and morale, which is, you can't even put it's priceless when your morale is bad. So then we have some questions. So First one is there a time of year that updating the asset list should be done?
I think everybody can figure that out for themselves, what works best for them or side. We actually, mine is ongoing. So I said you should do it at minimum, make sure you're updating it every year. But my teams are trained that if we replace, say, a ratchet set, for whatever reason, it walked off with the last manager or it got lost or
No,
broken.
that doesn't happen.
Sorry, managers. But we do update it as we go, but they have to turn it in, to me, at least twice a year. And
Okay.
then I also, outside of making sure we're keeping up-to-date tools, what if it has a warranty, if it doesn't, where we got it. It also is used by my supervisors. If we do have any turnover in staff, we use that as a check to make sure all our stuff is still there on
Right.
top of that. So it has two uses, to know that we have up-to-date stuff and that the stuff is still there.
And I'm really sorry to hear about your situation that you started off the webinar with, but again, proves, if you well documented and your team is trained and you have everything in place, it does save you a lot of headaches and money. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And in that situation too, it's a shout out to one of my vendors, because on the tail end of it, the customer whose car got punched with the aggressive employee,
Sorry.
the customer was on the phone with my call center, so it was all taped.
Well, gotta love technology, right?
Yep, gotta love it. But
all right. Well, hey, thank you so much. Everybody, you just send me some email, some questions. I know how it is. There's a lot to absorb, and you don't think of those questions until, it's 3:00 in the morning. So email me those. We'll get those to Sue. And if we have a bunch of them, we'll do part 2 and we'll answer specific questions. But right now, that was a really good overview.
I was just going to throw one last thing out when we talk about our insurance companies. When I was talking about either your local or your state regulations, your insurance broker agent should also be a good resource to help you find out if you have any of those kinds of things. That'd be a good starting point as well, to know if you're missing out on any of those that you need to incorporate as part of your training or part of your manuals as well.
Fantastic. Our group loves checklists, so I'll make sure everybody that's a vendor that's an insurance person can get us some checklists, and I think that is
and your payroll company as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I should have thought of that one, because I feel like all I do is update my employee handbook in California. But yeah, so my payroll company has been instrumental in giving me, as the state changes certain things, like we had to do a workplace violence section of our handbook and a big update this past year. We have to have those hazard checklists quarterly in certain areas, and the payroll company helped with that as well. Otherwise, it'd be easy to slip through and you wouldn't know you had to incorporate it into the employee handbook, which is different than your policy and procedure manuals. Those should not be the same book.
Right. Okay. And the same kind of question. The policy and procedure should be updated when there's things that are happening, and if there isn't anything that's happening, review probably quarterly, correct?
Yes. And again, if you have it set up in some kind of digital aspect, if you do a change, instead of having to redo the whole thing and send it out, you can electronically send the change to the employees and have them acknowledge it. And then you know that they've gotten that piece of information timely, and it's on record that they got it and hopefully really read it.
Fantastic. I think this was just really helpful as we're going into the new year. It's a lot for us to look into and make sure that these things are being done and we're keeping our tenants safe, our employees safe, and just everybody safe. So thank you so much, Sue. It was so great having you here today. And again, like, if there's more questions for Sue, just let me know. Email. It's AZSA at azselfstorage.org. And my name's Amy Amadeo. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. See you
Thanks for
soon.
having me. Thank you.
Bye-bye.